Yo, what's up? Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Still Processing, the 76ers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Chavalella, here with my guy, Justin Crosby. As always, big, major, huge news to talk about. A lot can happen in a week, and a lot did happen between the drafts, free agency, a guy by the name of Tyrese Maxey coming back on a max contract. Oh, yeah, and then there's a little matter of Paul George, still one of the top 30 players in the NBA, coming to Philadelphia in free agency, nine-time All-Star. Not perfect, but we're going to dive into why he's a good fit and the pros and cons of it all. So definitely be sure to leave your impressions of free agency so far for Philadelphia. Throw us your draft takes, but any hot takes you got, any analysis you have on any of the free agents, anything such as that the Philadelphia's done, and what you'd like them to do going forward, throw that up in the chat, and we're going to talk about that and more on today's episode of Still Processing, a 76ers podcast. All right, what's up again, everybody? Paul George is a Philadelphia 76er. At long last, and when I say long, I don't just mean how long it took to get to this day, the year-long plan from Daryl Morey. I mean how long it took to get that announcement in last night, too. I don't know about you guys. I was up for the whole thing. 3:30 in the morning. Are you kidding me? I get it. It's 12:30 California time, but we're an East Coast podcast, so it was a bit rough. But Justin, when you first found out, whether it be at 3:30 in the morning or you got a youngin at home, so you're probably not up at 3 a.m. unless they're up at 3 a.m. What was your first thought when you found out that Paul George was going to be a 76er?
About damn time. Um, Specifically, of course, the announcement, but just how original tea leaves were read, and then things changing, and then in a matter of days, things fall off the rails for the Clippers, and here we are. So, um, you said it best. I think the year-long plan that Daryl Morey put in place to get a third star and of course, as the day went on, different messages came out, and here we are now. He's, set the sign. So definitely about time.
Yeah, it's definitely was about time. There were more and more. I don't want to say it wasn't necessarily quite leaks, but just information coming out bit by bit.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, he's not going to opt out. That was kind of the first big domino. I think that when it came out that Paul George was opting out of his deal, that was probably the first moment where I thought, this is actually possible.
Yeah.
It seemed for a while, and I honestly, to this day, it might still have been Paul George's preference to go to Golden State. Uh, the way that I kind of rationalized that was, I mean, there's no way that the Clippers are going to want to send him to a division rival, but at the same time, they're not going to want to lose him for nothing. Well, I guess they chose which of those two evils they'd rather have, and it worked out well for Philadelphia. The meeting, obviously, with the Clippers did not go well. So, as far as the team announcing that he was not coming back after the meeting, and Philadelphia meets just a few short hours later, and eventually we have the announcement. And it's a new big three. It's a new era in Philadelphia, and for the first time, it seems as though all three of the Sixers' biggest pieces actually fit together, right? So when we look at kind of big threes of years past, and this is the Joel Embiid era. So obviously, if we wanted to go back to the 80s, there's times where the three guys fit together pretty well. But around Joel, there haven't been guys who have been A, talented enough, or B, complementary to each other to the point where there was a realistic chance that this could work. obviously during the Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid era, both players were talented during that entire time. It wasn't even, one guy was good, one guy was not. It's just the limitations by certain ones of them, we'll say, uh, kind of just hindered that fit. And so no matter who you added to that situation, whether it was JJ Redick, who wasn't talented enough to consider it a big three, or even when they added Jimmy Butler, who that's a lot of non-shooting for a team based around a center. And you're talking about two guys who do the same thing, just at various levels of aggression, and Jimmy Butler and Ben Simmons. So, and then even when they went on and added Tobias Harris, still not as clean a fit. Even when they swapped out Jimmy for James Harden, again, not as clean a fit. Even with Tyrese Maxey, who Maxey is a very complimentary player to Joel, but when you had them running with Harden, that's when you start having concerns about defensive backcourt, and it's just not a clean fit. But now you have your guard, you have your wing, you have your big man, and the thing of it is that everybody can shoot. Everybody, and I know Tyrese Maxey, this is the weakest part of his game. Everybody can play defense. Tyrese Maxey's grown into at least a playable defender. Close to that league average. He's still undersized, but he's strong. He's tough as nails. A lot of actually what's been talked about the Sixers' newest draft prospect, Jared McCain, kind of sounds like you're talking about Tyrese Maxey when you talk about effort on the defensive level. So, with that said, it's the best fitting trio that they've had. There are concerns. We're going to talk about those concerns. We're going to talk about whether or not they should matter. But when you look at that that big three in totality, Justin, what's your confidence level that the three of them are going to be able to actually make some noise together?
I'm very confident just of each person's adaptability, adapting to whatever the situation needs. So first of all, we already know Embiid's going to be the number one option. Maxey will be the number two option on most nights, which will leave Paul George as the third option. Some nights Paul will be the second option, while Maxey is, the tertiary option. Could be some nights where Paul George and Maxey got it going, and it's not an Embiid night. And it might be a night where specifically, and this could come playoff time or whatever, where it might be just a perimeter player's night while Embiid focuses on a lot of his effort on rebounding and defensive, defensive attention, rim protection and stuff like that. Those things can happen now. There really wasn't a luxury, of Embiid having an off night on the offensive end or taking a step back on the offensive end. Not to say that it's something he's going to do often, because he still is and was on his way to a back-to-back MVP and still is the best big in the world, or one of the best, tied with Jokic, whatever you want to say. But, I just think it's a great adaptability. I think Tyrese Maxey, having experience playing off the ball when James Harden's here, is tremendous in this aspect right now. You can run him off screens, which they tried to do previously in the Knicks Nurse offense. He can play on the ball. He can play off the ball. He can, relocate on post-ups, all that stuff. Paul George can do the same exact thing. Paul George can run off screens. They can run floppy for him. He can run baseline to baseline. He's not afraid to have that high volume shooting that they've needed in the lineup for a very long time. So I just think that fit wise, it makes sense. I think defensive wise, Embiid is, we know he clear any team with Embiid is going to be top 10, period, just because of the effect that he has at the rim. But adding Paul George now, he's not all world defender, but he's still a pretty good disruptive defender, right? Steals, getting in passing lanes, and being able to guard, for the most part, I say 1 through 4. In some scenarios, maybe the 1 is too fast or the 4 may be a little bit too big, but he still can do that. That in yourself, provides that, okay, we got a guy who can, guard the other team's best perimeter player or second best perimeter player and, allow for, all ends to work out. I just feel like this is the best. And again, we're going to talk about concerns. This is the best collection of cohesive talent around Embiid that he's had in his career. I think that now it's on him as well. You got the other guy. You gotta, and again, injuries. A lot of this stuff is freak accidents. Like his knee stuff has been freak accident, face freak accident, but a lot of he just has to try to stay healthy, continue to stay in shape. He's playing in the Olympics over the summer, so he'll be in shape. To quite the contrary to all the national media who keep saying Joel needs to lose weight. He actually lost a lot of weight while he was rehabbing and was very much skinny in the playoffs. And just in game, running up and down the court shape, no, but actually losing weight, yes, he did do that. So just trying to do what he can to stay healthy and maybe low manage more, stay above that 65 game threshold. And I think they'll be one of the best teams in the East. And I think depending on what Maury does outside of it, they can have a shot at the Boston Celtics, or you want to put the Knicks up there as well. But I just think his overall it turned out well.
Yeah. You talked about, I just want to touch on Embiid's weight real quick. It's not something that, we usually focus on. Obviously, he did lose a bit of weight due to the injury. I think that when people talk about that, they want to see him come into the year a bit lighter and kind of play that way. And so if he does, kind of transition to that, when he's not nursing, an injured leg and dealing with paralysis in his face. And, I think that we could be seeing potentially even the next level of Joel. But, that's part of the exciting thing too, is that, not only are you bringing a guy who is a known product, a known commodity. I mean, talked about his 3-point shooting, shot the ball from 8 times each game last year. Pretty consistent. I mean, he's averaged over 8 threes a game over the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You combine the past 7 years, and his average over that time is at least 8 threes a game, and he's consistently hit it at a high clip as well. Only 1 year did he go below 37% in those 7. So, and on top of that, most of those years he was over 40%. So, it's an encouraging sign. You want a volume shooter. You talked about the kind of 3-and-D potential, and yeah, he's not an All NBA defender at this point. I don't know that you need him to be. He's going to be a decent defender. He was playing in front of Ivica Zubac before, who is a very good paint defender. It's next level when you have Joel Embiid backing you up. So I think that's going to help him out a good bit. We've seen that improve players throughout the Joel Embiid era defensively, just having Embiid back there as a defensive threat. So and then again, having Tyrese out there is going to take some offensive pressure off of him as well. So really, all you need Paul George to do is just kind of come in and do what he does. Shoot threes, play capable level defense, and be able to get a bucket when he's asked to. And so I think that's what he's kind of looking forward to doing, and I think that he is more than capable of that. Even though he is, a 34-year-old player who just got signed to an expensive 4-year deal. I get it. The money's not great. It's not your money. That's the thing. Like, at least you have that to hang your hat on at the end of the day, is that it's no money out of your pocket. And you talk about a guy who, if things don't work out, 2-3 years, what's going to happen with the cap going up, and just kind of with the archetype and I think the general level of belief in a player like Paul George across the league, I think you'll be able to move off of him if you have to. But that's again just the absolute worst case scenario. Our own Tim Sullivan checks in asking if this allows the Sixers to compete with the Celtics. Compete? Yes, I still think the Celtics are rightfully considered the favorites, not just in the East, but in the NBA as a whole. They're the betting favorite. Of course, Sixers are number 2 after these moves that they've made. Justin, you brought up the Knicks earlier, which I think is another point that you do have to bring up. It's going to be really curious to see, if we're talking about this kind of together, Knicks and Celtics. Obviously, the Celtics have done a lot of good work today, bringing back Derek White on a new extension, Jason Tatum on a new extension. They have their core locked up, with Jaylen Brown, obviously. When you look at that and that future is secure, you look at the New York Knicks and they're relatively secure. They're going to be signing Jalen Brunson to an extension. Mikal Bridges more than likely will be signing an extension. They already signed OG Anunoby. Where do you feel that Philadelphia kind of ranks among those 3 teams that in that crowded Atlantic division. Are you feeling confident about their ability to compete? I know it's kind of tough to say without knowing the complete roster, but just after the Paul George move alone, where are you kind of falling on that topic?
Okay, Celtics champions, give them credit. They won a championship, should be considered favorite. Sixers definitely can't compete with them. Specifically, you have to see around what the roster is made of, but they definitely can compete. They are definitely more talented than the Knicks. They were more talented than the Knicks last season. So they definitely are more talented now. Now, cohesion around, the Knicks and the Wings, they basically tried to build, something around Boston to try to defend Boston and stuff like that, which was fine. But I do think they overtake the Knicks on talent alone. I think that the Sixers have 3 of the top 30 players in the NBA. The Knicks have 1, I would say. If you would say Jalen Brunson, he's probably in the top 30 for sure, top 25 for sure. So, yeah, it's obvious. Then, the rest of the Eastern Conference, you don't know what's going to happen with, the Bucks. So, I just think the Sixers are definitely the second best team in the East, and they will be competing. And then it depends on the rosters and what happens before. And a lot of this is, definitely about next year, but the next couple years, in my opinion, as well. We both, were at conferences, post game conferences when they talked about continuity and stuff like that. And I think it's about building that continuity as well. So you hope to win the championship in the next couple years for sure. And with the Celtics, wringing out every dollar from the owner before he leaves, who's to say what the money is going to look like and who's going to have to do what in the next couple of years as well. So they could be broken apart just as quickly as they were put together, in my opinion. So, we'll see what happens, but they definitely can compete with the Celtics. And if we know Morey, he'll, build around, he sees what the champions did and what their roster looks like, and he knows where he needs to go.
Yeah. Is there a smarter person in basketball right now than the Celtics owner trying to get the hell out of Dodge after winning a ring, after securing these guys long term, before having to pay any of the tax money or the greater portion, I should say? Just brilliant. The Celtics, they're always going to go up in what their worth is, but to kind of get out before dealing with those penalties, that's not bad. It's not bad. But when you talk about continuity, obviously Joel Embiid referenced that specifically, and it's that very thing that led to him wanting very badly for the Sixers to bring back Nico Batum, which did not happen. What they were able to do, though, was bring back another favored Sixer in Kelly Oubre. Now, Kelly Oubre signed what's known as a 1+1, so it's a 2-year deal with a player option. Total money is going to be $16.3 million for Oubre. But what's really key about this deal, the biggest thing about it that I couldn't stop thinking about as soon as I heard the news, is that this deal is going to allow Oubre to opt out after this season. Let's say all just goes well, right? It doesn't need to even go as well as it did last year. He doesn't need to become a 20-point-per-game scorer again. If he did that, probably that's a sign that things went wrong. But let's say that he plays his role well and he's back to, just like he was last year, very strong defender. And honestly, he kind of became the de facto point of attack defender. Let's say that's still the case because Paul George is probably not going to be overly interested in doing that. Let's just call it what it is. So Oubre, he becomes that defender, that versatile wing alongside George in the lineup. The Sixers want to reward him. He decides, hey, I can get more money if I opt out of this deal. What's great and what's mutually beneficial about that is that the Philadelphia 76ers would have what's called early bird rights on Kelly Oubre, right? So a lot of you familiar with bird rights. Early bird rights are slightly different. You're able to pick them up if you've been with the team consistently for 2 straight years without signing elsewhere. So obviously Oubre signed with the Sixers last year. That's year 1. This year, that's going to be year 2. He did enter free agency, but he signed with Philadelphia, so he did not change teams in free agency. Now, what he can do thereafter is that he can sign for 175% his previous contract value up to 175%, or I believe it's 105% of, if not 110% of the league average salary. The number that you're probably going to want to pay attention to there is the 175% of his previous salary. That's probably what you're looking at for the next Kelly Oubre deal. And if you're talking about that, you're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of $14 million as a starting salary. Where on top of that, this deal can also go up to 4 years in length. So we could be talking about a deal that's effectively right around the neighborhood of 4 years, $60 million. Oubre may not want to go all 4 years. You see a lot of free agents kind of stemming away from that with the way that the cap continues to inflate. But even still, even if it's a 3-year deal, let's say right around $45 to $50 million, roughly there, depending on the incremental increases, that's an opportunity to keep a guy in Philadelphia for a long time. And we're talking about at that point, roughly 5 years, dependent, right? So you're talking about that consistency. You're talking about that continuity in a key role as well. It's great when, you're like Garrett Temple and you're getting re-signed on 1-year deals by the Toronto Raptors every year to, not play, but to be a veteran, or Udonis Haslem. Like, that's great. That's super helpful. Kelly Oubre is able to contribute on the court as well. It's what's even more beneficial about that. So, we could be looking at a long-term role player here with Kelly Oubre. Don't let the fact that it's a 2-year deal with a player option scare you off. While there is a little bit of that flight risk, things went really well between the Sixers and Oubre last year. We got a chance to talk to him a lot. He very much enjoyed his time in Philadelphia. He loves the fans. He loves his teammates, loves the organization. They love him back. And they rewarded him with a pay bump. Obviously, he probably could have gotten more elsewhere. That was the story last year, too, when he did take the minimum. But Kelly likes to compete. Kelly likes it in Philly. And yeah, it seems like he's kind of Philly bound going forward. So, Justin, when you saw the news that they brought back Kelly Oubre on that 2-year deal, what was your initial reaction to the fact that they chose to bring back Oubre, maybe as opposed to some of their other free agents that were impending from the previous year?
I mean, like you said, I think that they liked the way he played. I think they liked the way he stepped up on defense in the playoffs against the Knicks. Like you said, starting to become the de facto, number one perimeter defender, point of attack, guarding the other team's best perimeter player. I think they liked that his effort on that part of the court. And I think now with Paul George, it makes even more sense because, Kelly, he's not the best three-point shooter. I say he's league average or a little bit under league average. He has his moments when he's super hot, but, he's not a guy you're going to rely on, even if he's taking high volume, to really knock him down all the time. So I think that having him on the court with Paul George is going to be super helpful because you still have Paul George and Maxey who are going to be launching them with high volume, probably, 16 to 23s a game between the both of those players. So, I think it'll be good in that, right? And I think also the first thing I thought of was like, yes, could keep the athleticism. Like, he was such a breath of fresh air athletic-wise on his team that didn't have athletes for a very long time. It was just Embiid and a bunch of slow people. And now you continue to add those athletes. And, I think he just like the one guy who tried to dunk everything, even when he shouldn't have tried to dunk it, and you knew he's going to miss the dunk. Like, that's the aggressiveness and the athleticism you need. He was a lob threat on the break. When do you see that ever? Like, you know what I mean? So it's just like one of those things where, I think that he adds another dimension to the roster. And I think, it was smart to keep him on that deal. And like you said, that player option is going to allow him to re-enter free agency if it goes well to get more. If it doesn't go well, he could just opt in and get another day, get another year and try to, make some more money. So, I thought it made sense. I thought it was a right fit. He absolutely, after the Knicks series, seemed like he wanted to come back. He felt like it was unfinished business. And I think, again, this is Kelly's first real winning experience. When he was with Golden State, it was the year that everyone was injured. Phoenix, they weren't good when he was around. He had like maybe one playoff run with like his first or second year in the league with Washington, but, it wasn't super serious. So it's like, this is a team with championship aspirations, and they're asking him to be a major contributor, whether it's 6 man, whether he's starting, whatever. So, it only made sense for him to return. So, that was, it was definitely good to see that he was able to return for the dollar amount that they got him at.
Yeah, I think it really kind of just works for both sides. And, obviously they use the room exception in order to bring him in. So that'll be officially done once Philadelphia finalizes all of their deals within cap space. So there's still, it's between 9.2 million and 12-ish million, because it depends on if they were to waive Ricky Council or Paul Reed. I mean, or theoretically trade them into space, but I think that's pretty unlikely at this point. I think they're either going to hold on to those guys and potentially trade them later on, or they're going to be waived now so that they can access the cap. So once Philadelphia then figures out what they're doing with that cap, then you're going to start seeing some of these moves be finalized. But it's not going to happen until after they officially run out of that cap room. Players they have used some of that other bit of cap money for. The big name, really the only other guy who's currently affecting the cap, and that's former Sixers big man, back again, Andre Drummond, who, like, listen, I'll tell you, like, I get it. People tell Sixers fans all the time, people in the Sixers organization say this: you overvalue the backup center situation. I get it. I hear you. When Joel misses an extended amount of time like he did last season, having a starting caliber center pays off. Andre Drummond, for his limitations, including his limitations, which do exist, they are present, he's a starting caliber center. He is still, I mean, he may not be, call it the best paint defender, but he's still a shot blocking rim protector at the very least. And on top of that, he's one of the best rebounders in the NBA. The Philadelphia 76ers were much better off for it when they had Drummond as the backup leading up to the James Harden trade. And it was a major issue for Philadelphia, not just because of Embiid's injury, but otherwise, it was a major issue for them when they lost Drummond in that trade. Brooklyn knew exactly what they were doing. Excuse me, when they wanted to, include Drummond in that trade, and they really wounded Philadelphia in that right. So Philadelphia tried to reacquire Drummond, obviously, last year at the trade deadline. They thought the deal was done. Chicago pulled out at the 11th hour, and now they have nothing to show for it, which, that's Chicago's going to Chicago. But Philadelphia now reunites with Drummond, and the backup center position between Drummond, Paul Reed, we'll see how long he's still with Philadelphia, and Adem Bona, who they drafted in the second round. I don't think that the depth of the center spots ever looked better. I mean, how do you feel about the center spot looking right now and the addition of Drummond again?
I like the addition of Drummond. Like you said, he does have his limitations. Like defensively, if he switched on to, or maybe he may struggle a little bit in the pick and roll. He does have quick hands, so sometimes he tends to get his hand in on those little pocket passes, and that can make a difference. Like you want to talk about rebounding, like he's maybe one of the best rebounding bigs in NBA history if you look at the numbers. So I think that having that coming off the bench, I think you saw that. First of all, Embiid's not the best rebounder right now. He's 7'2". He's a solid rebounder. He's not the best. But when you go to the bench unit, and last season you had Paul Reed, who you saw out rebounded, got a lot of allowed the Knicks to get a lot of extra hustle points, as well as Mo Bamba just didn't have the athleticism, it feels like, to hang in the paint. I think it's going to be super helpful. Like you said, I think Embiid, if he misses major time, I think he can definitely fill in. I think they'll play a different type of offense. He'll be a pick and roll type big, looking for the lobs, whatever the case may be. But, I think it's a solid pickup. He obviously wanted to be here. He always talked about how he liked it here. Surprisingly, he's a big supporter of the Blue Coats when he was here, and just being around. He loved the city, so I think it makes sense for him to come back. And then as far as the center position, honestly, we don't know what's going to happen with B-Ball Paul. It seems like it's writing on the wall that he won't be a Sixer much longer, but we'll see. I don't think I think they've learned their lesson from just cutting guys, right? Like, I just think they've learned their lesson. So, in some type of
You'd
trade.
think.
So, and
We'll see.
yeah, and then I think, they'll go out. I mean, we'll see what happens with the second round pick. With a dem bonus, see if he'll be the third center or if they'll go out and get somebody else. But it'll be interesting to see. But I think Drummond is a good backup, but they do need another. If Paul Reed is not here, they need another guy that will allow, them to have that third center when Embiid's not playing. Because Embiid's not playing. He's playing 65 games, the limit, or whatever the limit is. He's playing that, and that's all next season. Like, it's obvious.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna have a guy like Embiid be kind of the focal point, and I mean that in the sense of the tendency that he has to miss games here and there. You need a backup center. You kind of need a backup to the backup center. That's just kind of is what it is. You don't need to invest a ton of assets in that. A second round pick for a guy who has kind of a NBA ready-made skill set. Yeah, that's kind of enough. So I think Mbona can be that guy. Technically, they can sign him to a two-way contract. I guess we'll see. I think a lot of that's going to depend on just how the negotiations with the free agents go, any moves they potentially make on the trade market. But yeah, no, I think you have a guy who potentially can make an impact in year one in a Dembona, albeit in a rather small role. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do at the backup center position. But Drummond was not the only free agent acquisition that they made. They also, of course, had to bring in a former Houston Rocket. And I think when you look at all the former Daryl Morey players that he's brought in, this actually might be the best case scenario out of all those. Even when you're talking about James Harden, who, kind of had all those, it was a good idea at the time, but there were still some, some pretty big red flags that we, all kind of just ignored. Eric Gordon, he is what he is. He's 35, I think 35, 35-ish year old guard. He is not, overly athletic anymore. I mean, he used to have some bounce, but those days are gone. He shoots from so freaking deep, man. Like out the gym, and that's something that you just maybe you'll get that every once in a while from like a Kelly Oubre who's just feeling his shot, but you're talking about a guy who can hit him at a high clip too. So you're talking about Eric Gordon, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey. All three of these guys take deep threes, and to have that, to add that guy to that ensemble of deep 3-point shooters, that's going to go a long way. And he's a tough son of a gun too. Like he's not going to get bullied. He's not an overly talented defender, but at least he's feisty. At least he's got a little bit of grit. And depending on the veteran minimum, this is, I think, a great scenario. He was important for Phoenix last year. I get it. Phoenix didn't really go and do anything, but I don't think that was. I think that kind of had more to do with the near $50 albatross in the room, or $50 million albatross, I should say, and less to do with Eric Gordon. So, Justin, thoughts, Eric Gordon? Does he do anything for you as a free agent? Considering he's on the minimum.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good minimum signing. Again, concerns on specifically on lateral movement on defense. I mean, if bigger guards and wings try to post them up, he'll be just fine. He might be able to bump some guards off their spots when they're driving, but defensively, I mean, that's going to be probably a problem. And I mean, Embiid's back there, but we talk about that perimeter defense. Shooting wise, like you said, high volume shooter. He shoots from deep. He's a very quick trigger off the catch. Doesn't think when he's hitting. He's a guy who can really have you flying by with the pump fakes and still knock him down. I like that aspect of his game. He's also a willing, and I'm saying willing because we'll get to the next guy who didn't come back, but like he's a willing corner 3-point shooter and will shoot them very well and at a high clip and good percentages. Like the swing is something that Embiid and the Sixers really got better at last season. Him passing out of the double team or going across the court to the guy in the corner. Like you need guys who aren't going to be hesitant and pump fake with 4 seconds left on the clock. I mean, he can attack a closeout still, but he's not going to panic. He's going to shoot the three and live with the result. And Embiid, throughout his entire tenure, has been yelling at people to shoot the threes. He's going to shoot them. So for veteran minimum, you can expect that he's going to be in a lineup and probably start sometimes. I feel like just depending on what's happening with the roster, but I
Yeah.
do think that like you know the play on everything right now is let's get some shooting. So
Yeah.
I like it for a veteran deal.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably going to see cases, Paul George misses a game. Oubre slides down to the 3. Eric Gordon comes in at the 2. If they do bring back Kyle Lowry, which, Lowry is apparently drawing interest from Phoenix, we'll see what happens there. I'm hearing Keith Pompey in my ear. Are you hearing that?
I am not.
I must have played something on my end. I'll figure that out in just a second. I got Keith in
Yeah.
my ear. It must be from the other day when we were at the facility.
Yeah.
Got an angel looking down on me and Keith. But no, so when we're talking about situations where he may start, like it could happen depending on what happens with Lowry. I think Lowry ultimately comes back to Philadelphia, and we're not going to spend a ton of time on him in this pod necessarily. We'll wait until something actually happens with Kyle Lowry, but it does seem like he's probably going to be coming back, or if he doesn't, campaign probably will be. So you never know if it's going to be either one of those two guys hopping in there. But Gordon, with the experience that he has and the shot making ability that he has, I think he's a perfect fit to slide into that. I mean, perfect fit's a little extreme. He's obviously undersized like Maxey. Defensively, he's not as strong as you would like, but he's probably as fit as anyone to slide into that starting lineup is a better way to phrase it. Because he can draw attention with his shot. And, if there's an opportunity to knock it down, say Joel Embiid's doubled or triple teamed, yeah, you're going to have that opportunity to dish it off to another man. So, I think Eric Gordon is, I think he's going to be solid for the team. I think he's going to be a fun watch. I think Sixers fans are going to like him pretty much early from the jump. Now, you mentioned him. You referenced this. Obviously, Tobias Harris no longer with the Philadelphia 76ers. We are going to be kind and not rewind too much on his Sixers tenure. But, Justin, what were your initial thoughts when you saw that deal of him going to Detroit?
I thought that it was bound to happen. I mean, being around the stadium, being around the other beat writers and stuff like that, like, it's always talk. There was a lot of smoke about Detroit being his next destination and giving him a large sum of money to come and be that vet to help reshape what they were doing, and it came true. Um, I have a hot take, and I'll say this on the pod right now. I have a hot take that we all saw like a plunge of like play from Tobias after the trade deadline, like plunge. And I have a guess, and I wish I could ask Daryl myself. Maybe I'll DM him, but my thought around that is that I think that there were real conversations. They were clearly trying to get Bogdanovich and Alec Burke from Detroit. And I think that Tobias Harris was in those conversations. Woj mentioned it as well. But Sixers didn't want to give him up. My whole take on it is that maybe Sixers were trying to get draft capital because they were giving up Tobias Harris. And maybe Detroit was like, hey, we're not doing that because we're going to get him for free in free agency. So that's my little hot take. That's why I think happened, and that's why those talks fell through. But I think he's going to go there, and he's going to play with less expectations. I think he'll be the second leading scorer on the team outside of Cade. And I think we're going to look back, and I think that we're going to be like, Tobias averaged 21-7 in Detroit this year with no expectations. And that's it. And I think that's what type of player he's going to be. And I think his name will be floated around during the trade deadline for contenders, looking for some scoring help. And I think that's just the way it's going to play out. But, no need to look back on his revisionist, history or, talk. He had some good times here, but most recently, just struggled to adapt to his new roles. And I think he'll be better off. I mean, clearly, they'll miss him in the locker room as far as the type of person he was. But on the court just didn't fit. Didn't want to be a high volume shooter. So he'll go to Detroit and be that veteran leadership that they need to try to get that dumpster fire. Fix that dumpster fire.
Yeah. Detroit's had an interesting offseason. They when we were at the facility for the draft and they drafted Ron Holland, and we were all, we were talking, I think we were talking with Kai Carlin about it, but it was like I get it, like Ron Holland is talented, but like you need shooting around Cade. Are we just not adding shooting around Cade? And then, next thing you know, they add Tobias Harris, capable shooter, never shoots enough from deep, So I hope that changes for him, because I think that could be really the key to kind of unlocking some next act success for him in his career. So definitely some opportunity to help that team grow. Again, he did provide a lot of great mentorship and leadership here in Philadelphia. Tobias did play an important role. I don't know how much fans are going to miss us talking about the importance of him off the court, but I think that we are going to have a great opportunity to talk about the performance of some guys on the court, and I wish Tobias well on the court in Detroit. But when Detroit comes here, when the Pistons come for their first game in Philadelphia, it's definitely going to be interesting. There's going to be a few different really interesting matchups this season. I feel like, the Detroit's going to be interesting. The Clippers obviously are going to be interesting.
What about, so I do think he'll get a really good tribute video.
Oh,
I
sure.
also will think that he won't get booed. Tobias won't get booed. I don't think he's going to get booed, because I'm going to tell you why. He's been booed enough. So that's number one. Number two, it's not like he left, like he requested out.
Did people in Philly boo enough? Is that a thing? Is there a statute of limitations on booing? I was not aware of that.
I just think that he won't get booed. I think they'll show a good video. I think that
I hope he does
get his claps.
For the record,
he'll get his claps and everything like that. And then once that moment is over, then they'll pounce and attack. I feel like they understand the moment.
Oh, probably. I mean, we're talking about like Ben Simmons, James Harden levels of like when he touches the ball is probably going to rain boos. I think that there should be. I would implore fans to enjoy the tribute video when it does come, or even if you don't enjoy it, let him enjoy it. Give him a sense of peace and closure in it, and then let him have it during the game if you want to so bad. But
they better do it at the first time out.
But listen, it's so much more Tobias's tenure, which I think would not be inaccurate to consider it a failure, because we didn't win the chip. The Sixers didn't win the chip. The contract was a problem. It stayed in the way. You can't really blame Tobias for that again at the end of the day. Like it's organizational malpractice. So, be mad at who you should really be mad at. You can be mad at Tobias for the goose egg in the final game against New York, but that's a whole separate issue. But yeah, when he comes back, I don't know. I hope he's well, and maybe even we'll talk to him for a little bit, just to check and see how he's doing back in Motor City. But Tobias Harris no longer in Philadelphia. One Sixer that did, of course, come back, and this is where we're going to wrap up today. Tyrese Maxey, obviously, max contract, rookie extension, coming back to Philadelphia. Big thing of note: no player options, no sneaky business by Clutch. Yeah, just straight to the point. Philadelphia is saying we want to give you as much money as possible over as many years. Thank you for everything that you've done with the team. Tyrese Maxey and Rich Paul. Yep, sounds great to us. And, it's the most peaceful interaction I think that we could have expected. And I don't know if that's just because Tyrese and how much he loves being in Philly or what that is, but, now he's locked up for the next 5 years. And Philadelphia has a budding star in their hands. What was it like? And you covered the story for Philly Sports Network. What was it like for you when you saw that notification that Maxey was staying on the 5-year deal?
You hear it around a lot of the, you know, I want to say the reporting stuff, as well as the people, like, just well deserved, right? Like, the kid has come in, the Sixers lucked up and got him, and he's been literally able to do the 1% better every day thing that he talks about. And he's improved his game every single year. His role has changed every single year. And he's just going with the flow, done what they asked him to do, did it with a smile on his face, always smiling. Although I want him to, say more stuff to the ref so he can start getting respect and get some calls. But outside of that, couldn't happen to, a more deserving player for this city. And I think the Sixers are happy with his play. I think they understand that he has a lot more potential, a lot more growth. And I think they see that they have a superstar on their hands, and he's going to grow into that role, and he's going to do well. He does stuff for the community. He's taken well to the community. Great family. Just couldn't happen to a better guy. So it's good to see that. Excited to see that.
Yeah, his ability to kind of grow into this position and the conversation has always been, is there a true number one in there? I think there's a lot of fans who would love for that to be the case. I mean, listen, like I covering the team, I obviously want the team to be good. It's a lot more fun to cover a good team than a bad team. So with that in mind, like, I think ideally you would want any player to have that potential. That's great. And, if he does, he'll have the opportunity to kind of take over the reins, when, he, eventually, supersedes Paul George and Joel Embiid, because Father Time, as we all know, is undefeated. And he's going to have that opportunity to eventually take over the reins. So, the franchise is the heir at this point, and I think it's exciting. Again, that big three of Joel, Tyrese, Paul George. I, listen, I don't know. It's a good exercise to think of. Somebody threw it out there. It might have been Tim Bontemps, but somebody threw out the idea of Joel, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey being the best big three in basketball right now. I gotta say, I don't know who beats it. You could say that Luka, Kyrie, and now Clay is interesting, but I think there's a big difference between Clay and Paul George even at this point, considering both of those guys the third options. So, yeah, for me, I think it's far and away Joel, Paul George, and Joel. Any contender that you can think of to kind of take that mantle away? I mean, obviously, you're probably going to think like, oh, let's go to Boston, and you can say Tatum, Brown, and either Holiday or White. But at that point, you're talking about just a super role player, not an all-star. Holiday, of course, has been an all-star in the past, but you're not talking about that current all-star level guy. You're talking about guys who are extremely valuable. But is there a situation where you have an MVP caliber guy and then two all-stars alongside of him anywhere in the NBA? Can you think of any other situation like that?
I mean, you always, Phoenix has a collection of talent, but not good fitting talent. I think.
I mean, they got two. Can we not with Brad Beal? Like they got two.
Okay,
Like let's
I
call it
can
what
I can agree with
he's
that.
paid like it. But we just went on a whole spiel where we were trying to bite our tongues about Tobias Harris. I don't think that we need to
You're
give
right.
Bradley Beal any undeserved grace right now.
Yeah, no, you're right. And we'll see what plays out as teams try to build this offseason and, particularly, you know, become contenders or solidify their contender status. So we'll see what happens. But you're right; they're probably the best big three right now. And the best part about it is we talked about cohesively, they fit well. So it's not going to be a a bad fit, or you got two guys who can't shoot, one guy who does, or whatever the case may be. So I think it's a good fitting, and all they need to do is just make the parts around them fit a little bit better to complement each of the three guys, and I think they'll be off and running.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's still exciting to see what's to come. Who's going to be the power forward, or if, which I have a feeling Paul George actually might play a lot of time at power forward. We're talking about positionless basketball, so it's effectively a non-conversation. But wherever you go, if you add a power forward to the starting lineup, if you add a wing to the starting lineup, a defensive-minded guard with size preferably wouldn't be bad either. Whatever direction Philadelphia goes from here, it's going to be interesting to see who they add to that starting lineup that seems to be about 80% filled at this moment. But Paul George is a Sixer. I think that's a win. If you feel otherwise, feel free to put it in the comments. Hit us up on Twitter and tell us that we're idiots for thinking it's a good idea. At Chavo NBA for me, at Will Work for Sneaks for Justin. Just let us know, how you feel about this, because how the fans feel about it matters. And I know there's a lot of people who feel like this wasn't the best course of action. And, we'd love to have a dialogue to tell you, why there was no perfect option. And this is probably the best one. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. The winner of the autographed Paul Reed jersey will be announced tonight. So pay close attention. Make sure you're following Processing Pod 76 to find out the result of that tonight. So if you did enter, if not, you still have a little bit of time to enter in. I'm not giving you a hard timeline. So if you get in too late, unfortunately, it's just too late. But if you've already entered, you're going to have a shot to win an autographed Paul Reed jersey. Unfortunately, it comes at a time where his position with the team is probably as light as possible. But that's the autographed jersey that we have. So that's the autographed jersey that you're going to get. But again, thank you so much for the time. Next week, we're going to hop back on, talk a little bit more about free agency, dive a little bit into some of these draft guys, because we didn't really get an opportunity to talk about them all too much. We had a chance to speak with Jared McCain, Dembona. Sam should be back next week, and we'll be able to kind of cross over that a little bit more. And who knows? Maybe there'll be a little bit looking at the dates. Wow, I can't talk about it now, but there's something special in the works that probably on the episode after that, I'll be able to talk to you guys about. So stay tuned for that as well. But for now, I've been Zach here with Justin. And listen, it's an exciting era of Philadelphia basketball, okay? And a lot of people have a lot to say about what stage they're in. Is the process over? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if they're losing, if they're winning. Joel Embiid's on the team or not. We are, and now always will be, still processing.